There's three systems in the human body that were affected the most by COVID, now called long COVID. And that is the neurological system, so the brain, spinal cord, nerves. You heard about Guillain-Barré syndrome, people being paralyzed, dementia, ringing in the ears. Even you're lost in taste and smell.
Or losing the, what is it, on the frozen?
Bell's palsy.
Bell's palsy.
Is where your nerve in your face gets paralyzed. These are all neurological symptoms. But even loss of taste and smell that millions of people still struggle with today, that is a neurological symptom.
Right.
What about autoimmune? Does that have those?
Autoimmune diseases are included in the long COVID scenario.
Neuropathy?
Neuropathy is a big one. That's a neurological condition too, right? So neuropathy is inflammation and pain of the nerves in your body.
So that your neurological system was really affected by this.
Yep. And now cancers. Have you not heard about turbo cancers?
Returning cancers.
Yep, and returning cancers.
Wow.
Now, are you saying that this is a result of having COVID or taking the COVID vaccine?
This is 100% diagnosed long COVID is the diagnosis in parentheses or italics. It is called long COVID. 200 symptoms make up long COVID, and the definition is you had to have had a mild case of COVID that you recovered from, but then these symptoms persist and get worse for years. And I need to tell the world something. You ready? Daystar audiences, table, did you know that they've published that the symptoms you're gonna carry called long COVID, you will have for an average of 12.7 to 14 years?
Wow. Wow.
That's why I wrote the book.
Okay, so she talked about, you said anyone who's had COVID, but what about people who had COVID but also had the shot?
This book addresses both the categories of those who just got COVID, now have long COVID symptoms, or those who were vaccine injured or vaccinated and have symptoms.
What are the injuries for the vaccine injured? Is it the same list?
Very close to the same list. So myocarditis is heart inflammation and damage.
And that's what Dr. Peter McCullough talks about.
Big
These
time.
young men who have now the heart of like 60-year-old versus a 20 or 30-year-old.
Yeah, myocarditis is demoralizing, and the CDC published, and me and Peter went around the world testifying in Capitol buildings, that the CDC reported that teenage boys were having the highest rates of myocarditis being diagnosed within 7 days of the second Pfizer shot than any other age demographic. The problem with that is Dr. Hinton in England, in their National Health Services, they published a 50% death rate for anybody diagnosed with myocarditis within 5 years.
Oh, my.
Imagine it being a parent of a teenager diagnosed with myocarditis. And the great news is, during COVID-19, during the pandemic, they published a cure for myocarditis in 3 days.
What is it?
And it's a small dose of nicotine.
A small
Really?
dose of nicotine.
share it in the book.
We're going to get to that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, go back to Remdesivir just quickly, because a lot of people were put in the hospital, put on ventilators, and put on Remdesivir, which, by the way, is they're now calling it what?
It's the brand name for the drug Remdesivir is Veklury, V-E-K-L-U-R-Y. It is the exact same drug, but all hospitals are no longer saying Remdesivir.
They don't say, because people know now that Remdesivir isn't safe. But talk a little bit about what Dr. Fauci said about Remdesivir early on and what the real truth about Remdesivir is and was, and how many people actually died from being on the vent and Remdesivir.
May 1st, 2020, Dr. Anthony Fauci published a memo on his website, NIH.gov, and it was a 3-paragraph memo. I found it on May 20th of 2020, and it actually just stated, the only drug that can be used in hospitals in someone who's been diagnosed with COVID-19 in America is an experimental drug called Remdesivir. So out the gate, I knew it was not FDA approved and hasn't been around a long time or been prescribed by any medical professional. And I was curious about that. And in the memo, he stated there's 2 studies that he states in the memo proved Remdesivir was safe and effective for the Ebola virus and for COVID-19. So I read the 2 studies that were hyperlinked in the memo on May 20th, 2020, only to discover that the first research study he quoted, the Ebola trial in Africa, it was actually pulled from the trial by the Independent Safety Board on month 6 in the 1-year trial. There was 4 drugs in the trial. Remdesivir was pulled because it killed 53% of all people they gave it to, and that was more than the percentage of people who even die from Ebola. It was the only drug of the 4 that had a higher than 50% death rate. And then the reason why I hired a publicist, and anybody, including Daystar, knows who I am, is because Anthony Fauci's department at the NIH funded that study in Africa on Ebola with Remdesivir. So when he came out and said it was proven safe and effective, I knew he was lying. Then I read the second study, which was Gilead, the maker of Remdesivir, was allowed in January of 2020 to do a 3-month study on 50 people with COVID-19 around the world. Wow. And what did they publish? They published that over 30% of all the people they gave the drug to in the first 9 days experienced acute kidney failure, and 7 to 8% of all of them had to stop the drug trial in those 9 or 10 days because they needed an emergency kidney transplant because Remdesivir killed their kidneys. Then in November, after May of 2020, when I start speaking out about the truth about Remdesivir, the FDA in America approves Remdesivir for COVID-19 the last week of October 2020. The very next week, the World Health Organization in November 2020 publishes a press release for the whole world and makes a stance and declares no hospitalized COVID-19 patient in the world should ever be given Remdesivir because of its acute kidney failure rates.
Loving what you see? Then be sure to hit like, leave us a comment, subscribe, and share this video with someone who you know needs this kind of encouragement.